Yeah, you're live.
Okay, so this is Senate Transportation. It's Wednesday, April 2nd, 3rd. And we're going to be talking to Sergeant at Arms and the new Capitol Police Chief about just security issues in the building. So
excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
And you know everybody here? Do we want to do introductions?
I do, but I was hoping for some introductions for Chief Polway's benefit. Yes, so, yes. Would you mind starting?
Hi, I'm Tom Chittenden. I represent Chittenden Southeast.
Morning. Russ Ingalls, and I represent the Essex District.
Morning. I'm Andrew Persick. I represent Washington County, so this district that we're in presently. Then we have Senator Kitchell, that's Caledonia County, and then our chair, Senator Mazza from Grand Isle. And I'm acting chair. It's a pleasure to meet you. Yeah, like you as well.
So we have just some background on the transition in the chief role. We can also touch briefly on the transition in the Sergeant at Arms office. And then really this is an opportunity for Chief Polway to introduce himself, tell you about his background, his experience, leadership style, and some initial assessments of what he's seen in the building in the last 2.5 weeks. And nothing we plan to cover is confidential, so it's okay for the streaming. And if you have questions and you need to go offline, that would be okay too. So I guess quickly on the Sergeant at Arms transition, it's going well. Janet has stayed on board in sort of a consulting capacity, which is really wonderful because so much of the job, there's no manual, you know, there's like statutory duties that I know, you know, room reservations and messages and packages and the page program and all of that. But so much of what the job is just on the spot problem solving. A broken chair, you know, like what do you do with a broken chair? Stuff like that, little things like that, all the way up to big things. Like the State House has a planned expansion where we've grown out of it. So there's the Joint Legislative Management Committee has signed off on an expansion project that would add basically a whole addition to over where the coat room is. And those are very complex conversations with contractors and architects and BGS and leadership and all kinds of people involved. So the job is really amazing and thrilling, and it's an honor. It's an honor to serve. So transition's going well. Part of that transition was onboarding and recruiting a new chief of police, and that brings Chief Polway to the table today. So the former chief of police, I think he left maybe 6 months ago. And in the interim, we've had Kevin Williams, who some of you may have been able to meet. But Kevin did his job very kind of quietly behind the scenes. And he did a lot quietly behind the scenes, kind of cleaning up some things, creating some new policies. But a very big part of his role was the recruitment process. And so my understanding is that, that the recruitment process was very thorough. And when they received Chief Polway's, John Polway's resume, they were immediately impressed with the experience, where he comes from, the philosophies. He spent 27.5 years in the Larchmont Police Department in various roles. The last 13 of those years was as chief of police. And Kevin Williams, before he left, his last day was last Friday, shared that most of the time a chief serves for about 4 or 5 years. And that's, you know, that's a long-serving chief. To be in a department for 13 years really demonstrates the commitment to the community, and the community's commitment to you. So we're very fortunate to have Chief Polway, and I would like to turn it over to you now for some of your background.
Thank you very much. And good morning. I am John Polway. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I understand we're always limited in time, so I'll be succinct in my comments and leave a few minutes for questions or comments afterward. So just briefly about myself, I'm married 28 years. I have 3 children. My son Luke is the oldest at 24. I have a daughter Abigail. She's currently in college at 22. And my youngest son John is in school as well in Rensselaer. He's 18. So God bless you. And as a young person, I aspired to enter into law enforcement because by really virtue of what my parents had taught me. My dad was a Marine Corps veteran, and he was a 30-year member of the NYPD. So at an early age, we were taught service above self, to be part of the solution, and to, contribute to your communities. So I always felt law enforcement was a wonderful vehicle to achieve those types of things. So when I graduated from high school, I attended Long Island University and I obtained a bachelor's degree in criminal justice. And then I entered into the New York City Police Academy, spent about 2 years in the city, working primarily in community policing initiatives. When I left, though, I was a patrol officer on steady midnight tours on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. Then I went to Larchmont and I served as Agatha States for about 27 and a half years.
What's the population of Larchmont?
So it's about 6,000. It's a village, but it's Westchester County has about 1 million residents.
Right.
It's right outside of New York City. Larchmont is about 1.5 miles square in terms of geography. It has about 6,000 permanent residents, and then it swells to about 8,000 during the day because of schools and businesses and that type of thing.
It's got a pretty active commercial districts.
It does. It has 2 distinct business districts, a lot of shops, restaurants, that type of thing. So in Larchmont, I served in many different capacities. I began my career as a police officer. I was a detective and a youth officer. I was a sergeant, a detective lieutenant, and then ultimately the chief of police, and I served in that capacity for 13 and a half years. As chief, one of my roles was the emergency response coordinator, and that I was charged with making sure our emergency response to any natural man-made disaster was as complete and thorough as it could be. It taught me early on that I needed to establish meaningful relationships with external stakeholders. One of the things that we were 28 sworn personnel, and for that part of New York, it's considered a smaller job. So in the event of a true emergency, our resources were expended rather quickly. So I had to rely on my counterparts, my town and village chiefs and departments around me, certainly the county Department of Public Safety, state police, and sometimes even federal authorities. So I think I learned that, and that was a very valuable lesson. But I always felt that law enforcement is one of the most difficult jobs in the country, and probably for many reasons, but the reasons that I would identify, at least immediately, would be it's constantly changing and in flux, and we always have to adapt to it. So there are legislative changes that occur that actually affect our operations, what we can and can't do, the type of force that we can use. There are societal expectations that continue to change, and there are different interpretations about what law enforcement should look like in any community or state. And as technology expands and grows rapidly, being able to stay in tune with all of that as we try to deliver our service, which is public safety. So really, to that end, I felt it was important for my entire career to continue to educate myself and train myself. So in 2005, I returned back to school. I went to Marist College in New York, and I attained a master's degree in public administration. And that was invaluable because as I became a chief, really my role was more administrative. So now I had knowledge of budgets, personnel issues, leadership, all those types of things. Then in 2016, I was very fortunate to be selected to attend the FBI National Academy in Quantico, Virginia. And for those who are unaware of the program, Quantico is a big Marine Corps base. It houses the DEA Academy as well as the FBI Academy and other federal agencies. And they take, in the National Academy program, they take senior law enforcement executives, and they put them through a 10-week intensive program. Academically, we studied police and social sciences, and then counterterrorism. And I probably took 3 very important lessons. I took many lessons, but 3 very important ones. The first was caring for your people, and that started with yourself. So you had to make sure that your mental and physical health was well, and then you can transfer that to your people, making sure that they had the resources available to them to not only just survive, but thrive, that they were being trained and educated, that they were getting time off that they needed to spend with family or in other endeavors. So that was very important. The second was using best policies and practices, our standards. how are we conducting ourselves in terms of the law enforcement agencies? Were our policies the most up to date? Were we doing things that were in line with good policing? And we were moving towards accreditation before I retired, because that's really the kind of the gut check for using best policies and practices. And the last was, I think I undervalued it a little bit, was networking. So my academy class was about 48 different states were represented, and about 15 or 16 countries were represented. So as you spend time with all these people, you get to know them and you become part of their lives. I'm still in touch with many of them through social media, and we go to training events. But what was interesting was you saw that regardless of where people came from in law enforcement, many of the issues were the same wherever we were. And it was a matter of how we looked at it and produced results for our communities. So that's briefly my educational and professional experience. I'd just like to talk briefly now about my observations coming into the department. Right now, we've just promoted Sergeant Truhan and Sergeant Massera. You probably know them as Chris and Sarah. They are very capable and dedicated officers, highly trained, and they continue to train or receive training. But they are what, as I expressed them, they're going to be the building blocks of this department moving forward. So it is my intention to make sure that we are as professional and responsive as possible to this community here. We are now in the process of interviewing and doing background investigations into several individuals in the hopes of backfilling positions because we are down quite a few. And really what I expressed to them as well is what reality we present to these new people coming in will be all that they understand. So we've gotten a lot accomplished. Right now I'm assessing operations. I'm trying to identify short, medium, and long-term goals, and then creating paths to achieve those goals. A lot of it's going to take time, but that's okay. You know, there's work to be done, but I have a good crew with me, and we're gonna get it all done. So the first day I worked was the 18th of March. And the very first thing I did was take a tour with Kevin and Janet of the building. And when I was done, I was overcome with concern. This building is very porous in terms of safety and security. There is no formal screening process whatsoever. And that's an issue as far as I can see. And I'm going to begin to address that. And I understand there's opposition from some of the legislators. They've expressed that to me, but I've also seen a great deal of support for beginning the process of instituting increased safety measures. I think one of the first things we need to do is probably separate entrances for elected officials and staff. So if you can fob your way in, you're coming in a different place, and everybody else, the public, they are funneling in through a central location. This way, even in the initial steps, we can post officers there and we can observe human behavior. How are people acting? What are they carrying? Is there a need to engage them in conversation and find out kind of what's going on? And then ultimately, I think we need to have magnetometers as one of the final steps, and we need to be doing searches of people based on what we're seeing. One of the part-time officers that works for us he's in the judiciary, actually, right over here, and he runs the magnetometer program for every courthouse in Vermont. He's a wonderful local resource, and he has a great deal of knowledge. I've spoken to him twice about different safety issues and how we can address them. He's willing to come over here and give demonstrations to show that the technology has advanced to the point where you can refine it just to look for handguns or IEDs, things of that nature. So you can't go from 0 to 100 without experiencing a bit of pushback. So I think if I'm deliberate and incremental in my approach in instituting new safety measures, it'll be more readily acceptable. But I think it's something that certainly has to be done. So that's kind of where I'm coming from, just to let you know. Again, I really appreciate the time that I've had to engage all of you, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
So on that 0 to 100 comment, I really appreciate your approach, and I think everything you said is absolutely reasonable. One suggestion that I think came up last year when we were talking security, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and if this is part of your lens, is the magnetometers. Would you see that as going from nothing to a single entrance with permanently installed ones, or do you see an incremental approach where you might have the ability and the equipment to randomly on certain days or on specific days where escalated concern that you'd be able to just be able to roll the equipment out to have magnetometering to check for people on those days, just to sort of mix things up a little bit? Or do you see it as going from nothing to having it permanently installed where everybody walking through there will have to go through that process?
So again, I think before you even put that in, we want to change behavior. Ultimately, is what we want to accomplish. So now if we start by changing how we're just even entering the building and how we are observing the people that are entering the building, that's not intrusive at all, really, right? Now we're not denying anybody access to the people's house. And just as an aside, I think it's a wonderful thing that in the country, because we've had Sergeant Truhan call every state capital to see what their security measures are, and we're still assessing that information and still waiting for feedback. But the fact that people can walk in and engage their legislators and have access to the physical structure of the State House, I think is a wonderful thing. I'm a history enthusiast, so I believe probably that's the most pure form of how our government was intended to be, right? So that people would have immediate access. But I also think that denies the reality that exists in 2024, and we can't deny that. What I would, in my vision of what we should do, I think a magnetometer eventually, again, after incremental steps occur, should be a permanent part of what we're doing. One of the comments that was made in one of the committees yesterday is that on certain days in the State House, there is law enforcement protection for the state of the state by the governor. Everyone gets screened. There are bag checks. There are police officers everywhere. And then the remaining days, there's nothing. And nobody, your safety and the safety of all the visitors is just as important on those days as well. And the ability for something to occur exists always. One of the things I've learned, this is one of the most visited sites in Vermont for school-age children. So there's an absolute obligation, in my estimation, to make sure that all of them are safe and secure. And once the screening process is in place, it acts as a deterrent in a sense, because people are aware that they are going to be screened, and it changes their behavior. So I would consider it a more permanent move ultimately. And then if something activates on the magnetometer, there would be hand wands where you can potentially identify suspicious packages that people might be carrying.
Yeah, it's been a debate for years, and other chiefs have said the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I know it's a debate you'll get into as you go to those meetings.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's almost going to take an incident to really propel everybody to.
Yeah, and I know there are some other state houses that don't. I think I remember in the past they've said we're one of 4 or 6 or something that don't have that kind of level of security.
But, well, as a chief, you're really kind of setting yourself up for failure for not having anything. Because
Right.
you come into the job and there's nothing. Well, what'd you do?
Yeah,
Well,
right.
I did with what?
At the very least, you say I advocated for those dumb legislators and wouldn't let me do it.
True story.
Yeah. And it's kind of a weird question, but will you be in uniform? Because I know like Chief Romney was, but Williams was not, and I didn't know if there's a tradition or if there's a choice or how that goes.
So currently, I'm in the process of becoming a certified law enforcement officer in Vermont.
I see.
So I've had to submit all my FEMA records, my New York State records, every certification that I have, and they analyze that and they do what's called a prescription for training. So there are some classes that can be waived, but there are mandated classes by the state of Vermont that I will have to take. So I will actually be back at the academy sitting in classes, at least for a little while. So And at that point, I will be authorized to wear a uniform. So I would say on most days, I will be wearing a uniform because there are only a finite number of police officers in the building, really. So the uniform becomes readily identifiable to everyone. They know who you are, that you're there to help, that you can respond in an emergency, that now they can pick you out directly in a crowd. So I think it's important to have that presence. So I'm the chief of police, that they should be able to recognize me and I'd be wearing a uniform. There will be days where I'm dressed like this or in a suit. I think there's value to that also. Right now, not everybody knows me, so a lot of times I'll walk around the building and I'll put my back against the wall and I just observe.
Sure.
I want to see the movement of the building, how everything works. And it's a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that kind of incognito in a sense. And
Couldn't do it in a uniform.
you know, you can't do that in a uniform. So I think it'll be a mix, but primarily I'd be wearing a uniform.
Yeah, I thought you were a lobbyist for the last few days. Big question, Mets, Yankees, or I encourage you to.
Oh, absolutely. So I can't believe this has been a discussion in so many committees, but thank you for asking. So what I will say is I'm becoming accustomed to, and I use this term gently, the oddities of Vermont life.
Yeah.
To become certified, I think I have to learn how to make maple syrup. And nobody told me that, right? So I'm working on that. But my family were big baseball fans, and I would never willfully root for the Yankees. So I'm a Met fan.
Okay.
But and now I understand I'm in Red Sox territory. So I'm sorry about 1986. That was a tough one.
No, you're not.
But usually, as the Mets collapse after the All-Star game, then we'll follow the Yankees after that.
That'll work.
I guess I have a question for you since you're here, and that is the plan for the mail.
Yes.
I always feel like that is a temporary situation that we have, but it seems like it's becoming permanent because it's been there for whatever,
Yes.
3 years. And so I don't know if that's part of the renovations of the back entrance.
Yes.
Or what's the plan there?
It is certainly temporary. It's not very aesthetic.
Yeah.
It's not very practical. So it is temporary. And we still do have the mailboxes. They did not get destroyed.
Good.
So it's about finding the right place for them. And David Sheets it's a priority for him to make sure that we find it
Yeah,
a
probably.
stable, permanent.
Crazy every time he walks by those tables.
Yes, yes. And I did hear the comments in Senate Appropriations the other day about the mail and legislators not being able to get to their mailbox, and perhaps there's a role for the pages there to deliver mail that hasn't been picked up by the end of the day, or some sort of schedule for that. So that's I'm working with the doorkeepers to maybe find a better system for that too. But certainly that is temporary.
Okay, and would it be back by that co-room when that's changed, or that's to be determined?
To be determined. Next year, it's the start of a new biennium, and we're hoping to get some more general purpose rooms. Room 10 and 11 used to be general purpose rooms.
No.
There's two, and room 9 was the coat room and mailboxes. So that all got disrupted by COVID. And further disrupted by the flood. So there are some very high level leadership conversations going on about that. And so the domino effect of those would be something like, where did the mailboxes go? But it is our goal to find a more permanent home for the mailboxes.
Chief, have you met with Montpelier Police, I assume?
I have. In fact, Chief Nordenson, we had a promotion ceremony for Chris and Sarah, and it was a great event. And he knows both of those officers. Yeah. So he came here with a bunch of his police officers, which I thought was great. The other day, I had occasion to go to his headquarters because I wanted to see his operations. And then we went to the state police barracks and we talked about tactical and operational plans for the eclipse that's taking place. Right. So as I expressed earlier, I understand the value of working with my external partners, and I need to begin to form these relationships immediately. So he is going to be one of our contingency plans when there's a true emergency. So I need to establish a meaningful relationship with him.
Yeah.
He's been already a great resource for me in terms of policies and procedures, just understanding Vermont law and criminal procedure law, that type of thing. So we will continue to develop that relationship. One of the great things about the National Academy, talking about networking, the second day I was here, I got an email from Chief Vale from Barry City, and he was in my academy class, and I had no idea that he was up here. So all of a sudden, it was a friendly face and name, and he said anything that you need. And we also had a gathering a week after I was here on that Monday, which would have been the 25th. We had in the cafeteria, we had a lot of chiefs and law enforcement officials, sheriffs, state police. They came just to have some lunch, and it was kind of an informal thing. We were able to sit and talk to people, introduce ourselves, and that begins the process of again, building these meaningful relationships. It's so very important.
Yeah, you had an advantage of the current sheriff used to be a Capitol Police officer. Or I don't know if he was just like temporary or he was like filling in, but he had a role in the Capitol Police before he was the sheriff. The Washington County Sheriff.
Oh, the sheriff, sorry.
Poulin?
Mark Poulin.
Mark Poulin, yes. So he still works part-time here.
Okay, yes.
And he has been another great resource. I met him during my interview process. He's a wealth of information as it relates to Vermont and law enforcement in Vermont. So he's another one that I've been talking to, which has been very helpful.
Good. Okay, well, thank you and welcome.
You're quite welcome.
Yes, well.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yeah. And then Senator Kitchell has any questions?
Yes,
She
she'll
knows
find
that.
us,
Yeah.
yes. I do want to say, I was prepping Chief Polway on the membership of the committee, as I try to do every committee we go into, and was talking about Senator Mazza and what he means to the institution, and that he is noticeably missing from the chair. And just want to say that we know you're missing an all-star. And I worked with Senator Mazza for many years, worked with his daughter in her role with the Agency of Administration. So just to share that we're all missing him. And thank you for running the committee.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, something that's on our minds a lot.
It is.
And yeah, he was very supportive of the institution, and he saw the role of the Capitol Police and the Sergeant at Arms in keeping those traditions and keeping it the way it was, keeping it open. I don't know how you feel about the magnatrons, but he would definitely be interested.
The Dean of the Senate.
Yes, those are all his photographs
Just looking
up
at
there.
that. Great.
And the woman in many of the photographs is Senator Kitchell, Chair of Appropriations. So.
Yeah, we probably will never be able to take that down.
Maybe David Sheets will have some ideas of how to
Yeah,
memorialize it,
yeah.
to make it permanent. Mm-hmm.
Well, you have the governor up there.
That's
Governor's
The
there.
whole picture of the
Yes.
governor, other lieutenant governors, other governors.
becomes a bit of a scrapbook
I
in
know.
some ways.
Really
A
is.
very special, in fact, it's very unique in the building to have a display like that, something
Yeah.
that's personal and sentimental and historical in so many ways. So
What's the context of the Peachum photo? I don't get that.
I'm not sure neither.
That place.
Maybe it's a connection, I don't know, I mean, that's right next to Danville, I don't know if Kitchell has connections to Peachum or something about that sign. I think other people just have been throwing up like that keep smiling, we had a picture of Senator Bray up there for a while, we finally took that down, I don't know.
the bulletin board has been curated.
Yeah.
These have been removed, yes.
Okay, well, thanks for coming in,
You're
looking forward
welcome.
to working with both of you and your new roles.
Yes.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. And if certainly there's anything I can do in my department for any of you, just reach out and let me know.
Great, thank you.
Pleasure meeting you.
Yep.
So 10 o'clock Clayton's coming in, so we can